we are talking the supernatural horror movie Reawakened, and this one is directed and co-written by Jose Altonaga, and no one real kind of famous in this one, all kind of pretty much a cast of unknowns here. Now, the story of this one actually has two timelines. So we have our modern timeline where we have a detective interviewing this young girl in hospital, trying getting her to tell the story of what happened to her and her friends on a camping trip. And then the movie is then told in flashback, intercut with scenes in the kind of the modern era, showing you what's happened on said camping trip, where essentially a group of friends go camping, discover a seemingly abandoned house out in the middle of nowhere, go in there, find some type of sort of shrine that looks to be used of dark magic. One of the girls finds like an amulet, decides to pick it up and becomes possessed by the spirit of a long dead witch. Now she then proceeds to kill off her friends and try and get this magical booklet back. And then we have our kind of our modern era of the lone survivor kind of telling what was going to happen. And then the adventure continues from there, essentially. So, what works, first of all, with this movie? I think the idea for the story here is solid, if not a little bit kind of generic, to be honest. It's quite a fun, very simple setup that I think is, you know, can be told in an easy way without kind of too much convoluted, you know, storytelling and stuff like that. And the idea is you know, fairly easy to kind of digest. I actually thought the introduction of the two timelines here was actually done quite well. Sometimes I feel it's sometimes difficult to, when you're kind of, you know, going back and forth between different timelines, sometimes it's hard to determine which timeline you're looking at. But because we have two very distinct locations here, you kind of know what's going on, and I feel that in itself, the simplicity of it makes it for an easygoing kind of going movie experience. I actually think the acting wasn't too bad here for most of the cast. Now, this is a lower budget film, and when I'm going to come on to this, I feel some of the acting here may get thrown under the bus from some people. But I've got to say, I thought the acting wasn't too bad, and I thought the cast here did a pretty good job with the kind of the material that they have been given. And I actually even would go far as to say I really enjoyed some of the interplay between our characters, in particular these two female characters that have a little bit of a one-upmanship kind of going on, and the other they keep trying to outbitch each other. And I just thought it was an element that was added to give characters an extra kind of like dimension and flesh them out. And sometimes that's what people are like. And it really didn't have any bearing on the story, but it was a good part of a good bit of character work there. And for example, we have this one girl deliberately tries to flirt with the other one's boyfriend, not because she's interested, because she knows it's going to piss off the other girl. And I just thought it was somewhat realistic about how people are sometimes like in a movie that really had, you know, didn't have any kind of real plot kind of significance, to be honest, but it was some good character work here. There is some fun scenes here. There is a scene later on in the movie where we have let's just call it a demonic entity comes into the police station, and it will remind you of a paranormal Terminator. The scene in the Terminator where obviously Arnie goes into the kind of the police station, it reminded me of a demonic Terminator. Let's just put it like that. And I thought that was kind of like a fun little kind of sequence there. And there's an element here which I think is a little bit clever in regards to how the demonic entity maybe wants to how to skirt around some rules that are put upon this demonic creature in regards to who she can and can't kill. I thought that, again, it was just a little bit of clever writing here that I felt that maybe go a little bit overlooked by some. So there were elements here where I feel the writing certainly was quite good. You know, and it's a relatively briskly paced movie. You won't be kind of too bored at any one point. It doesn't lag really, and kind of any kind of deaths are peppered throughout the movie, thus making it a relatively well-paced film. But let's talk about maybe what doesn't work. And to me, we have to talk about by far and away the biggest issue here. And I have to be honest with you, I feel the directing here is quite poor. And I'll lump in the cinematography as well with this. this movie is, on a technical level, is quite poorly made, unfortunately. So what do we mean? How can I give a little bit of context on this? Okay, so on a cinematography wise, the footage looks unnecessarily dark at times. The use of lighting, silhouettes hasn't been thought about in a particularly well. We'll often see people with kind of light behind them. That's really kind of shading out the details when we're seeing them. Even in bright scenes, in daylight, for example, it has this weird soft focus that reminds you of an 80s episode of Dynasty. It's the best way I can kind of describe it, that sort of thing. There's a use of, because it's a very low budget movie, and obviously they're trying to kind of maybe hide some of the kind of the lack of special effects and kind of stuff like that. There's use of blurring effects and stuff like that, which again look kind of quite bad. Just obvious video effects, things like this. So and then there's some really poor editing choices as well. There'll be kind of like edits of just people. The camera will kind of will have a scene, and it will then flip to like a quick shot of someone doing something completely irrelevant, and then go back to the shot and stuff like that. So there's some really poor editing choices, some poor transitions into other scenes here. So I've got to say that on a technical level, I feel this movie is suffering, unfortunately. Added to that, we have some extremely poor video effects, CGI effects here that I feel this is what people are going to remember. It looks unfinished, to be honest. I mean, I saw this as a screener, so it maybe is, but I very rarely have ever got sent an unfinished screener, to be honest, because it's never normally that far before the movie comes out. But there are some visual effects here that look incredibly basic, and it almost would be better just not having them, just having like mystical effects, people doing stuff without the use of the kind of the visual effects here. And there's one involving a bullet. Again, it would have just been better to just not have it, to be honest. I feel, although the actors do the best they can with the roles, and there are a couple of instances where I think the writing did well. To be honest with you, most of the characters are fairly generic stock characters, without any kind of real written to be kind of real human beings, if that makes sense. They're just fairly kind of typical. There's also a few kind of plot issues here that just doesn't really seem to ring true in regards to any type of realism. We have a character in the camping scenes who clearly gets possessed because her eyes have gone white. And the other characters just say, "Oh, something's wrong with their eyes," but there's literally like an altar with all these kind of like satanic paraphernalia and stuff like that. So again, just like, come on. And then we are the actual witch, this kind of demonic entity. I think the movie is supposed to think she was, innocent. But then she comes back as a killer witch, and then even in the flashback sequence on that, her eyes go white, and she clearly kind of goes evil. But I think the movie thinks we're going to empathise with her, and then at no point does our kind of protagonist try to contact a priest or anything like that, and she knows at this point there is a demon around, but she doesn't even ask for a priest or anything like that. There's also an unsatisfying element to the ending here, where, without kind of giving anything away, the fate of a main character is really left a little bit kind of ambiguous as to what happened to them. There was an event that happened, without kind of spoiling anything, and thinking, what actually happened to them? I mean, we don't actually know. So I think this movie has some good elements in it, and I think it has the seeds of what could have been a better movie, or maybe better movies to be made down the line by the kind of by the people that are involved here. I think people will look at the movie as a whole, because it comes across as so cheap. They'll just tar the kind of like the actors here, saying, "Oh, it's shittily acted," and it isn't. It's by no means kind of like Oscar-winning material here, but I think the acting isn't too bad. But I feel that the movie that they're in is so cheap. I feel the actors will kind of get tarred a little bit with it, to be honest. Should you recommend this movie? Really, the technical aspects alone for me, I have to put this as a below average film. But there is an element of enjoyment here, because I do think this story is relatively good, and there are a couple of elements here that I did enjoy with it. But it's actually quite a hard movie to watch in regards to this. The technical aspects of this movie are so distractingly bad at times. It really does make it quite a chore just to kind of get invested in it, because it really takes you out of it, because you're just thinking, man, that's such a bad kind of shot, or such a, you know, a sequence doesn't kind of really feel like it's real and things like this. I mean, maybe if you know, I'm watching this movie to review, so maybe if you don't care and whatever, then it may not bother you. But to me, I can't help but kind of notice these things. And as such, I'm going to give this movie a 4 out of 10. There is some enjoyment value here, but I feel some of the kind of the directorial choices and the cinematography really needs to be upped to the next movie. 4 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.